My stepmother gave me 30 days to move out, so I gave her 24 hours. My stepmother Carol had turned my father's house into her personal fairy tale kingdom, and I was the unwanted stepchild she'd been plotting to banish since day one. She'd throw my food on the floor, dump garbage into my room, and even tried replacing my shampoo with super glue. But in front of Dad, she'd turn into the sweetest person ever and brush everything off as a joke. The mask started slipping the moment Dad got sick. First, she convinced him to skip my high school graduation because the stress might be too much for his heart, and then posted pictures from their wine tasting trip that same weekend. When I got accepted to my dream college with a partial scholarship, she sat him down for a family finances talk, suggesting they couldn't afford to help with my expenses because of his medical bills. That same week, she bought 2 new designer bags for her collection. The real cruelty came when Dad went into hospice. She limited my visits to protect his rest, giving me 15-minute windows while she spent hours there. I'd arrived to find her discussing estate planning with him while he was barely conscious, sliding papers in front of him and making him sign everything. When I asked her about it, she told me, "Sweetheart, you're too young to understand grown-up responsibilities like wills and property." When I tried staying overnight once, she called security, claiming I was disturbing the other patients by sitting quietly beside my father's bed. The morning after Dad's funeral, while I was still in my black dress and hadn't even finished my coffee, Carol walked in jangling house keys like she'd won the lottery. "We need to talk about your living situation. This house is mine now, and I think it's time you found your own place. I'll give you 30 days, which is more than generous. And frankly, dear, you're a reminder of a past I'd rather leave behind," she announced, not even pretending to grieve anymore. She slid an eviction notice across the table, already filled out and dated the day after the funeral. But what broke me wasn't the eviction notice. It was when she sat there in my mother's kitchen, wearing my mother's jewelry, and called me a reminder of a past I'd rather leave behind. I stared at this woman who'd spent 3 years playing loving stepmother while systematically erasing me from my father's life, and something cold settled in my chest. If she wanted a competition of who could live in this house, then I wouldn't just participate, I would win by a landslide. I smiled back and said, "We'll see," which clearly unsettled her. I spent the next 24 hours strategically digging through every document Dad had ever given me. Then I remembered the manila folder he gave me and marked, "Only if absolutely necessary," that I'd never opened. When I finally opened it, I found everything. The deed of the house, a prenup, and a letter in Dad's careful handwriting explaining how he'd been watching Carol's gold-digging behavior for years. I spent hours studying every document, highlighting the relevant sections, organizing them in the perfect order for maximum impact. The deed first to establish ownership, then the prenup to crush her legal fantasies, and finally the doctor's statement to eliminate any contest possibilities. Carol was so confident she'd manipulated my dad that I knew she would never see this coming, and I was right. I went back to the kitchen the next day and dropped a bombshell on Carol. "You were right. Someone does need to move out." Then I placed the deed on the table and watched her face go from smug to confused to straight up pale. "This is my house. It has been for 2 years now." She snatched the paper and read it frantically while trying to deny the reality. "This can't be right. I was his wife. I have rights." I pulled out the prenup next, the relevant sections highlighted in yellow. "You have the right to the personal property you brought into the marriage, plus the car Dad bought you last Christmas. That's it." Her hands shook as she set the papers down. "You little bitch," she whispered. "You've been planning this." I shook my head. "Not me. Dad planned this. He knew exactly what you were." She stood up, knocking her chair back. "I'll contest this. I'll get a lawyer." That's when I pulled out the last document, a notarized statement from Dad's doctor confirming he was of sound mind when the trust was created. "Go ahead, but you'll need to do it from somewhere else. I want you out by tomorrow. That's more than generous." She started crying ugly, manipulative sobs within 5 seconds. "Where will I even go? I gave up everything for your father." But I was already dialing the locksmith and scheduling an emergency rekey for that afternoon. By evening, her designer bags were piled on the lawn, and Carol was screaming from the driveway about family loyalty and Christian values while the neighbors watched from their windows. Eventually, she yelled curses at my father and drove off in her car. The next morning, I found her eviction notice in the trash and framed it. She told me to find my own place. Turns out I already had one.